talking all about baby eczema and toxic burden. And this is a huge problem. This is a root cause that I really see in a lot of my babies. And baby eczema is such a big problem. So many babies are coming out with eczema nowadays. And the question is why? And I have a big answer for you today, because our world is extremely toxic. We are extremely toxic as adults, and therefore our babies are getting this toxicity. One of the ways our baby is getting this toxicity is through our moms, unfortunately. Moms are harboring these toxins in their system, and unfortunately, a lot of times these toxins are things that we can't even control, but a lot of times they are things we can control, and we may just not even know that we have exposure to these toxins. So moms are transferring toxins to baby via breast milk, via the placenta when they are in the womb. So it is ever so important to make sure you detoxify if you are wanting to get pregnant. And it's just so important. And I think this IG Live is very important to me right now because I actually am pregnant. And before I did get pregnant, I actually did a 3-month cleanse where I basically did our Clean Body program. I actually tested myself for environmental toxins, heavy metal toxins, mycotoxins, and I really wanted to make sure that I was nice and clean. Even though I live a super clean life, I still found that I had some toxins in my body, and I actually did need to do a 3-month detox. And I really recommend this for anybody who is trying to get pregnant or wants to get pregnant, in order to make sure that your baby and your pregnancy is as healthy as possible. Also, that you can get pregnant as easy as possible. This is something that you really want to do, is make sure to detox, because we are harboring toxins. And even me, I live an extremely clean lifestyle, and unfortunately we just can't get away with from it. So, you know, we want to prepare for the pregnancy, and then during the pregnancy we want to be as clean as possible, and that we know, but we need to make sure we're preparing for that. Now, I want to talk about some of the key toxins that I actually see in a lot of the babies. I see a lot of heavy metals, I see environmental toxins, I see toxins from personal care products, and food toxins. So let's talk about them. Okay, so the heavy metals that I see often, I see aluminum. Aluminum might be coming from things like your cookware, if mom is using deodorant with aluminum, and baking powders. If you are baking with baking powder, you want to make sure to get aluminum free. I'm seeing aluminum in babies, and there are other places, you know, there are adjuvants and vaccines that have aluminum, and some people might be more sensitive to not being able to detoxify these things. And also, you know, the amount of vaccines at once also can make a difference in terms of that adjuvant level, and also the other aluminum sources that you have in your life. I see a lot of uranium, which is a crazy one to find, but actually this is coming from tap water. So I recommend that you guys check your tap water. Go to EWG's tap water database and see if your water has things like uranium in them. I often see uranium. I do see arsenic in tap water as well too. So make sure you are filtering your shower water and your drinking water. And of course, as I said, you want to make sure to do this before you get pregnant, and then if you're already pregnant, doing it then, and then if the baby's already here, then making sure that you filter all those water sources now as well too. I see a lot of arsenic. Arsenic comes a lot from our rice, and I also again see it in water, but you want to make sure to get some clean rice sources, and the cleanest is going to be actually the organic basmati rice from California. I do like the company Lundberg in terms of rice that has low arsenic, and you know, I think a lot of times we might be thinking we're doing something healthy and we're eating rice instead of gluten, and then we find that, okay, there's arsenic in the rice, unfortunately. So make sure that you pay attention to that, because I do see arsenic in my patients. Lead and mercury come up a lot as well too. Mercury, I find often it's from mom having amalgam fillings, and those are those metal fillings that are made up of 50% mercury. And mom is potentially transferring those onto baby. This was actually my deal. I had eczema my entire life. I was born with eczema, and my mom actually had so many amalgam fillings in her mouth. Sorry, mom, if you're watching this. Later, when I was a doctor, I actually looked in her mouth and I saw she had all these amalgam fillings, and I had actually had high mercury, but I really don't have mercury sources. I don't eat a lot of tuna. I myself don't have any amalgam fillings, so the question is, where did I get this mercury from? And it is very possible I got it from my mom because her levels were also really high, and I was born with eczema. And so it's possible that when her pediatrician was saying, oh, you know, Diane might be allergic to your breast milk, you should stop breastfeeding her, it actually wasn't that I was allergic to her breast milk, but I may just have been getting some toxicity from her breast milk. So that's one to really consider. There is a company that will actually test breast milk to see if there are heavy metals in the breast milk. You guys can go to cleanbody.health/products, go down to testing, and you'll see there's breast milk testing kits, and you can see if there's any toxicity in there. Okay, lead, I do feel like lead used to be more of a problem when we didn't regulate it as well. It is a lot more regulated nowadays, but we still can have lead left over from when lead used to be used in our paint, in our pipes, you know, and in those places. And so people in an older generation may have transferred it onto people in my generation, for example, and I could be transferring it onto my child as well too. Okay, so those are the heavy metals that I see. The way that we test those things, we can test it through urine. We can do a chelation test where we actually give you something that pulls out the metal, and then you kind of collect it in the urine. We can do things like poop tests. We can look at the poop and see if there's any heavy metals there, and we can do blood tests as well too. And all of those types of tests may have different efficacies in terms of telling us how many metals there are. So you need to make sure to work with someone who really understands how to use those tests appropriately. And just doing a blood test sometimes doesn't cut it, because the heavy metals do like to actually go into our tissues, into our bones. They like to hide out. And so you may actually not see the heavy metals on a blood test. And so, you know, you don't just want to do a blood test. If you are going to do a blood test, you want to make sure that your practitioner kind of knows how to read it, and you still may have high heavy metals even if the blood shows that you don't, because everything could be kind of tucked away. Okay, so heavy metals, that's a big one, and I do find it a lot in my babies with eczema. And you know, again, it could be from mom. It also could be just from environment, and the water is a big one in terms of filtering the water. Let's move on to environmental toxins. So environmental toxins, I see a lot of pesticides, glyphosate, and these come from things like GMO foods, conventional foods. So you want to make sure to check out EWG's Dirty Dozen list. Make sure that you are eating all of those foods organic, purchasing those organic. And if you eat out at a restaurant, make sure that you still try to eat those in an organic way, and maybe avoid them if you're at a restaurant and you know it's not organic food. And so that's called the Dirty Dozen. Then there is another list called the Clean 15, and the Clean 15 are the 15 foods that you can actually buy conventionally, and they're cleaner. They don't have as many pesticides and herbicides on them. I do see a lot of these in my patients in terms of pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate, etc. So, you know, it's the best thing you can do for yourself. Eat organic, eat non-GMO. I know it's a little more expensive, but it is quite important. Okay, so environmentally, those are some toxins I see. In terms of personal products, I see a lot of parabens, and you'll see on a lot of cosmetics, you'll see that a lot of cosmetics nowadays have kind of paraben-free. They'll say those things on there. So do make sure that you are getting paraben-free products. If you can't read the label because it's in another language or something like that, I had a patient who had that problem. She was using Korean products and she couldn't read the label, but she was using it anyway. And then when we did the testing, we saw, oh my gosh, there's so many parabens and other cosmetic toxins in her system. Cosmetics can be very, very toxic, so make sure that you are cleaning those up. EWG, again, has such a wonderful resource. It's called Skin Deep. On our product recommendations page, we also have recommendations for clean beauty products and things like that. Again, you can go to cleanbody.health/products for that, okay? And so these are all things we need to be thinking about. In terms of food toxins, we talked already about GMO foods. Those are genetically modified foods, and some of the most common ones are corn and soy. And so those are some things to think about in terms of making sure you get those non-GMO, because they will be using glyphosate and pesticides, things like that on the GMO foods. So you want to make sure to get non-GMO foods. And then also food toxins include things like preservatives and dyes and all of those extra things that we just don't need. If you are going to do something that needs to be have some color, use other things like beets for coloring or other types of fruits, turmeric for yellow, for example, instead of using food dyes. Those are actually quite toxic and they can really cause some problems. So these are all of the toxicities that I really see in a lot of my baby eczema patients. And I mean, I also see these a lot in my adult patients as well too, but I think we're talking about baby eczema this week, and I think it's important to note that I find these toxins in our babies and to think about our baby eczema and why is it happening? Why are so many of our babies having eczema? It's really because your eczema is your skin is a detox organ. And if the body is not detoxing well, if you're not getting the toxins out the urine or out the poop the way that it should, the skin is going to take the burden of that. And so you may get inflammation on the skin, and there could be an output of eczema that really happens. And when you clean everything up, the skin looks beautiful. And a lot of us know this. If we do like a juice cleanse or we eat super clean, our skin just starts to glow. The other important thing is, the preparation for pregnancy as well too is important. So we are, really preventing these things from happening to our children. And I'll do another live about kind of prenatal, preconception detoxification and all that, because that's really important. In talking about baby eczema, actually the thing we also want to think about is we need to be healthy before baby even comes. And so this is really something that you guys should be looking into. And I think what happens also a lot is your doctor isn't checking this, unfortunately. Your doctor isn't checking for toxicity. Your doctor isn't checking for any of these things. This is not something conventionally that is checked, unfortunately. And so a lot of people will kind of comment and say, oh, well, my doctor has, checked everything. They've done all these labs. You guys might think that in your labs you're being checked for toxicity, but you are not. You are not being checked for toxicity. You are getting checked when you get your yearly labs. You are getting checked for cholesterol and, heart disease and diabetes and, that type of thing. You are not getting checked for toxicity. And oftentimes we're not asking the question of what is the root here? What is the cause? And oftentimes the cause lies in what I've been talking about this week. Number one, microbial imbalance. Number two, toxic burden are two of the biggest factors that we kind of don't have control over, or maybe these are things that are just kind of external to us that are basically putting burden on the system. So if we identify what those things are, we can start to remove them, we can start to clean them up. And this is also true of babies, okay? So I wanted to kind of single out babies because I think we kind of feel like, oh, this is just genetic because my baby was born this way, this is genetic. And I think that's what I was told my whole life when I started to learn, no, I can empower myself and I can take this into my own hands. I can start cleaning up my life, cleaning up my diet, cleaning up everything. and then my skin will get better, that's when I really started to see some changes. So, you know, this is all about empowerment. It is Eczema Awareness Month. I hope that I am empowering you with this information and you use these tools to really help yourself out. What prenatals do you recommend that are healthy and clean? Great question. I usually do not make supplement recommendations here just because this is more educational. What I do have to say is I really do like food-based supplements, and I love food-based supplements that are organic. So there's some great ones out there if you just kind of look in terms of organic and food-based. I love the food-based ones. They're actually made from organic you know, fruits, vegetables, sea vegetables. I really like those as well too. And do remember that everything I'm saying here, it is purely educational. You should make sure to work with a naturopathic doctor or an integrative doctor or even a holistic nutritionist to get some support. And you know, we do offer support at my practice. If you are interested in booking a consultation with me, you can go ahead to the link in my bio and book a consultation. We have a lot of freebies as well too. You can try our assessment to check out, you know, what is the health of all of your organ systems. And you can also go to my free masterclass, which will be, the next one is next Tuesday at 11 a.m. And I'll be teaching the class about cleaning your skin for good. So we'll kind of dive deeper into some of the stuff I'm talking about on these IG Lives. I would love to go ahead and open it up to any questions. If you guys wanted to type into the comment box and just ask any questions, happy to answer any of those. Someone saying very true, and those tests are expensive. Oh, I know. It's really unfortunate that our insurance doesn't pay for this kind of stuff. It's so frustrating because this is where we actually get the answers. It's very frustrating. What I have to say about that is these tests they're a way for us to evaluate you, and sometimes the evaluation is like the hardest part of things. If we don't know what we're dealing with, how are we going to help you? So I do think the tests are very much worth it. And when people work with me, I do try to figure out what tests are necessary. Not all of them are always necessary. I'll listen to your story, and if you say, oh, well, I have exposure to this, I'll say, okay, then these are the tests we might need to do. If you've never had exposure to mold, for example, or you don't have mold-like symptoms, I may say, okay, we don't need to do the mold test, but we should do this test, this test, this test. Sometimes people will come to me and then they just want a test for let's just test all of the toxins. I have a really great test called Total Tox Burden, and so that's a really great test that we could do, and it basically checks like all of the toxins. It just kind of gets a baseline for us, and then we can start to clean things up and start to detox the system. Okay? The assessment's amazing. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think that what the assessment does, and for those of you guys who don't know, we have two assessments. One is the organ assessment, and the organ assessment, it's basically breaking down 17 organ systems in your body, and then we break down about 10 like check-off boxes for each organ. And I think it's eye-opening that you have a certain type of symptom, and one of those symptoms is like, let's say, a cramp on your right side under your right rib. And what the assessment does is say, okay, well, that could be related to liver issues. And now you might want to look more into liver function and maybe get some more liver testing. And I think it can be really eye-opening to see how your symptoms are really just an alarm system. They're really just an alarm system saying that there is an internal organ system problem. And I think it can be super eye-opening when you do the assessment. So definitely check out our organ assessment. Again, the link is in the bio. And afterwards, definitely make sure to read about the organs that you have dysfunctional so you can kind of learn more about it. And if you do decide to meet me for a discovery consult at some point and you have done the assessment, we can go over it, and then I'll kind of break down what we would do. And if you guys do the organ assessment too, you can also see the tests that might be related to those organ systems that you may want to ask your practitioner for, or we would work together and do that, okay? I'm in NYC. I would love to have you as my doc. Can we do telecalls? So if you are, so I am licensed in the state of California, so I work with patients in California, but my practice actually is able to support people outside of California. Instead, you would work with someone on my team who is able to support people in New York. But I am still part of the process because I am actually part of the entire program. We do weekly calls together and all of that. So definitely check it out in terms of go to my website, check it out, and just kind of see what you have available to you depending on what state you live in, okay? And worth every penny, absolutely. I definitely think these tests are worth every single penny. And it's kind of like, I feel like a lot of us are searching for answers, and these tests provide the first step of the answer is like, okay, this is what's wrong. This is what's burdening the system. If you have eczema or your baby has eczema, there is a burden on the system. We just need to find what it is. Eczema just doesn't happen alone. And eczema doesn't just happen by itself where it's just genetics. Genetics predisposes you to this problem, and then typically some kind of burden needs to be put on top of the system in order for it to actually cause a problem. And I know this personally because, I mean, I used to have full-blown eczema all over my body. It was so horrible. And, you know, nowadays, like, I don't have that, and yet I still have the same genetics. My genetics hasn't changed. And this is also true of all the that have changed. And that's because we get those burdens out of the system, off the system, because we clean things up, and then we actually internally clean the system as well too, okay? So what is the process? Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you, April. Yeah, I have not actually officially announced it, but I decided, you know what, I'm just going to announce it right now because we're talking about baby eczema, and I think that's really important. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm super clean, and I still, even on my test, for my total tox burden, I still came up with some toxins. It wasn't incredibly high, but it was high enough where I myself needed to detox and wanted to make sure that I was clean so that I could get pregnant really easily. And it was actually super easy to get pregnant. I'm actually 40, so, you know, and I know a lot of people get really afraid. Oh my gosh, we're so old and we can't have a baby anymore. But I mean, I got pregnant on the first try, and that was probably because I cleaned up my system and I really just got everything so clean. And our bodies, you know, until we no longer are menstruating, we are supposed to be having babies. So even if we're older, so, you know, it doesn't need to be a hard thing. And I'll do a live totally on that next time. But thank you so much, April. I appreciate it. All right. And I'd love to open it up to any other questions anybody has, and happy to make any comments about anything as well too. And we are talking about baby eczema. I am doing a whole set of lives this month because it's Eczema Awareness Month. I feel like there isn't enough education about eczema, so I really want to educate about the root causes of eczema. I think the education about eczema is more like what medication to take instead of what's the root cause, and so that's what I really want to educate about this month. If you guys have any other ideas of what you want me to cover this month, definitely reach out to me, DM me, or comment right now, and I'm happy to cover those this month because I am spending some time this month to get to the root cause with you guys about eczema. I'm also hoping to interview some patients so you guys can kind of get to know people who have succeeded in cleaning up their systems, because that is really, really important too. We want to know that this actually works, not just for me. And so we'll get some people on here as well too to chat about that. And thank you so much. Someone said 40 looks good on me. And by the way, you know, I know people tell me that all the time, like, oh my gosh, you're 40. And it's just clean eating, guys. It's clean eating, living healthy, being healthy. It's really what I call the pillars of health, which in our program we call them the clean body pillars of health. And it's really the basics. It's eating clean, being healthy, doing something you love, all of those things. It keeps you young, okay? All right, and thank you so much. Have you heard about the topical steroid withdrawal and the misclassification of it as eczema? Yes. So I myself actually had topical steroid withdrawal. It was actually when I was pregnant the first time. If you guys would believe it, I actually have a 15-year-old. No, she's 14-year-old. And so when I was pregnant with her, 15 years ago, I actually stopped using my steroids completely. It was actually the first time in my life I stopped using my steroids. And at that time, I got topical steroid withdrawal. And honestly, it was something people didn't know about back then. And it's still something that our dermatologists don't always recognize. And sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And it's when you stop using your steroids, it doesn't even just have to be topicals, but you could have also taken oral steroids as well too. And it's also called red skin syndrome. So what may happen is you'll get kind of like a red sleeve, and it might be here, it might be here, it might be around your torso, it might be in all those places, and then you'll also get like burning. It's a burning. There could be oozing, there could be cracking of the skin, and it's a little different from eczema, so even the look of it is really different. I've done a couple of lives, but also posts on that, so you can kind of check, kind of scroll down, and there's some information on TSW there. But absolutely, and unfortunately, this isn't something your doctor might diagnose for you because it's just not well recognized at this point, and hopefully it will be someday soon, but it's not really well recognized. I personally went through it, so I really know it intimately, and then now I've supported a lot of people with TSW or red skin syndrome. So there's some really important things there that you need to really support, and it can be difficult because the hormones are really not adjusted, and they are not doing what they need to do because you basically have kind of disrupted it with the topical steroids. And if your doctor is telling you, not to use the steroids in certain places like triamcinolone and those heavier duty steroids, definitely listen to that, because I used to do this. I used to, even though I'm not supposed to use the triamcinolone on my face, I just wanted my face to look better, so I would put it on my face. And that's one of the ways you'll get topical steroid withdrawal too, is if you're kind of using it on these areas that you have kind of thin skin and it absorbs into your system a little bit more, and it's a little too strong for those areas because the skin is so thin in those areas, okay? A food to stay away from, so absolutely with sugar. Someone is mentioning sugar. Sugar intake, so first of all, sugar is toxic. Let's just start there. Everybody should be avoiding sugar, unless they're natural sugars like fruits. We weren't meant to eat this much sugar. It's why diabetes is such a big problem. It's why weight gain is such a big problem in our country and our society. So sugar is one of those high on my list items that I recommend. But the other thing with sugar that can cause a problem with eczema is, we talked about in the last lab, is microbiome imbalances. And when you have microbiome imbalances, let's say you have, bacteria that's overgrowing, fungus that's overgrowing, yeast, candida, etc. When you eat the sugar, those things are going to proliferate, and then you can actually see more symptoms when that does happen. So not only is the sugar itself toxic, but I do notice that with eczema, because there's usually a microbiome imbalance, the sugar will kind of tick it off, and then you'll get increased symptoms, okay? Other foods that I like to stay away from for eczema: gluten and dairy. And even if you're not allergic, you may be intolerant or sensitive to these foods. And even no matter what, these are inflammatory foods in our country. And I say in our country because sometimes when you're kind of doing local dairy and gluten in Europe, I notice that my patients don't have as many problems with those gluten and dairy sources. But here in America, they'll come and they'll take a plane and they'll hop on the plane, and then they have gluten here and then they have problems. I would recommend avoiding gluten and dairy, but of course you need to consult with your physician or meet me for a discovery consultation so we can work together and I can really kind of understand, if that's the right move for you. But usually across the board, I have noticed gluten and dairy is a problem for most of my eczema patients, okay? And if you are breastfeeding, you also want to avoid gluten and dairy too if you have a baby, since we're talking about baby eczema, right? If you have a baby that's breastfeeding, you also need to avoid the gluten and dairy, okay? All right, you're welcome. I feel so safe that you know about it and not so alone now. Oh, I'm so happy about that. You aren't alone, and I do hope I'm going to be doing these lives all month, and I'm here for you, and that's also what our program is like. We literally have these kinds of calls with all of my patients every week. They're called weekly support calls, and we actually chat with you throughout the entire process because I really wanted that when I had eczema. I wanted a team to be there for me. I wanted someone who understood exactly what I was going through, and unfortunately I couldn't find that because TSW was not even a thing back then. And it's so hard dealing with this, especially if you have a baby with eczema. You don't know what to do. Your baby is so uncomfortable and you have no idea how to deal with it. So our Clean Start program, we have 3 versions of it. We have a coaching program, we have a wellness program, and we have a medical program. And in the medical program, you work with my entire team, which is me and a nutritionist. And we are by your side the entire 2 months. And it's basically the start of your care, and we evaluate you, we do all the labs, we actually track your progress, and we're checking in all the time to kind of make sure things are going well, and make sure you get the support you need. So I'm glad you don't feel alone, because you're not, and all of us here on this call, we likely have eczema, right? So we are not alone, and a lot of us are dealing with this and not getting the answers that we need. So that's what this month is all about, and I love this month because I think that we need more exposure on these topics. How can we detox from topical steroids? Okay, so detoxing from topical steroids, it's I don't necessarily want to think of it as a detox. So the reason you got eczema in the first place, you likely need to detox that reason. The reason you had eczema in the first place might actually be a toxic burden or a microbial imbalance in your system, and you need to detox from that. But if you have topical steroid withdrawal, it's not exactly about detoxing. Well, one, you have to wean off the steroids, but it's about kind of helping the body to kind of make its own steroids again, and those are steroid hormones, and because you have kind of disrupted that, so you have to know how to replenish that, and there's several ways that we need to do this. And the unfortunate thing is, right on the skin, the skin is reacting. You're getting a lot of redness and inflammation on the skin. So using things like cryotherapy or ice therapy can be really helpful. And there's so many other things that can help TSW if you know you have it. And it's different for everyone because everyone has it a little bit differently. The other thing is, you don't just have skin issues. You can often actually have hormonal issues as well too. You might be super tired, you might be not sleeping well, you might just feel like depressed and you can't get up from bed. That is all part of topical steroid withdrawal or steroid withdrawal. It's not just the skin symptoms that usually come with it, okay? All right, I'll just see if anyone has anything else to say. Oh, April, thank you so much. April says her programs are wonderful, so supportive. April, thank you so much for sharing that. That is what we're trying to do, just like what I'm trying to get from these lives, that you guys feel like you're getting the answers. This is what we do every week, right, April? We meet and we talk about our struggles, we talk about our wins. We ask questions, and all those questions that you never get answered, we try to answer those. So thank you, April, so much. Do topical steroids get stored in the body? Okay, so topical steroids are steroid hormones, and topical steroids are basically kind of replacing that. They're replacing the hormones your body should be making. And so just like any other hormone, like a birth control pill, for example, if you take a birth control pill, you're no longer going to make that hormone because you're taking something that's actually doing that for you. It's kind of like that for topical steroids. So it's not exactly that they're going to get stored in the body. It's kind of like you disrupt the system so that it stops doing that, and then you need to retrain the system to potentially do that. We got to do some things to get the body in order so that it can start doing that on its own, and we can pick things up and start moving again. So that's more what it's like, instead of thinking of it as getting stored in the body. Okay? All right, great. Well, thank you so much for joining my IG Live today. We are going to keep this going. If you guys have any ideas of what else you would like me to talk about, that would be great. I am going to talk more about baby eczema this week, and we're just going to do that through this week. Next week, we're going to move on to kids because there are some other things we need to think about there. And then we're going to move on to adults and any other topics you guys want to have me talk about. That would be great. I'm going to try to get some patients on here to talk about their experience if they feel comfortable. And I hope that you guys get some awareness about eczema root causes this month with me, and I'll be talking all about it. So definitely come. And if you want to learn even more, you can come to my masterclass next Tuesday. The link is in my bio. Or if you want to meet me personally, definitely check out the consultation and do the assessment beforehand, okay? All right, have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.